Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Welcome in to First Things First. I'm Sarah Kustok. That's Danny Cannell, Chris Broussard. We're filling in for Cece, Nick, and Jenna, who are out today. But we got a good show ready, right?
We have a great show.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know how good our content's going to be, but I think we're clearly the better looking crew.
Way to set the bar high off the bat, Danny.
That was mostly a shot at Nick. Like, it wasn't anybody else, just Nick.
Definitely better dressed, too.
Yeah.
Well, we're here, and the NBA was back last night,
Yes.
which is exciting. And last night, the new-look Cavs played their first home game since the big trade deadline acquisitions. And the results weren't ideal, with the Cavs losing 110-103. LeBron was his usual awesome self, scoring 32 points, including 14 in the fourth quarter. However, his new teammates combined for only 29 points. Here's what LeBron had to say after the game.
You know, like I told you guys, it's still a work in progress with us, and it's not going to be overnight no matter, the excitement before the break. We got a lot of things to work on, implement what we need to do, but, tonight we still played to our game. We just didn't make a lot of shots. I think we played well tonight, even though we lost. And there's no, I hate losing, obviously, but I think the way we played, the way we shared the ball, defensively we were flying around as well. And those guys just, they played better than us tonight. So I like the start. I like the direction we're headed in.
Chris, well, LeBron obviously still seems positive about things, but was everybody too quick to jump back on the Cavs bandwagon?
It's interesting because you could see the excitement in his face, even in that comment after they lost. But look, I get it. I'm with LeBron. I was not on the bandwagon just because of the way they beat Boston and Oklahoma City. I looked at that trade from the moment it was made. I was like, okay, they're going to win the East because of the fit of the players. So one game last night, a home loss, that's not going to make me jump off the bandwagon. Defense was their number one problem. You added one elite defender at the point guard, the head of the attack at the point guard. You need a great defender there. You had poor defenders, Isaiah Thomas, Jose Calderon, Derrick Rose. Now you have a good one. Then you added three athletic guys who have the tools to be good defenders. Larry Nance Jr., Clarkson, and Rodney Hood. Now, they're not that great defensively yet, but with those three players, they have the tools. If they buy in, they should be good defensively. So I'm still on board. I think there's plenty of reason to be optimistic in Cleveland.
Absolutely. I think that's the best word to use. It's optimism. And I'm still optimistic about the Cavaliers. But in saying that, when they started off 2-0, I just was kind of like, let's just slow down a little bit. And I get it. It's LeBron. It's the LeBron effect. Like, everybody wants to talk about him. You get excited about him. You want to see how this team can do, how they stack up in the Eastern Conference. But I do want to see. I'm actually glad they lost because I want to see how they respond to adversity. Because when everything's great and you got fresh blood in the locker room, everybody's in a good mood, yeah, everybody's going to love each other. But I want to see the honeymoon period end and start to see the marriage work and see if they can work out some of the issues that they are going to face, like when they go ice cold from the floor in the fourth quarter and they don't make any threes, or when they lose a game and how do they respond at practice? How do they respond to LeBron's passive-aggressive styles? If he calls somebody out in social media, how does that respond? And I still, again, it did remind me, after the first two games, it did remind me a little bit of the optimism when Isaiah Thomas came back. In that first game, remember he came back and he comes out and plays.
First two games.
Yeah, and everybody's like, this is awesome. This is going to be a great fit.
Yeah.
And I try to just slow down, relax, let's let it play out, let's see how this works. And I think this is just part of the process for the Cavs, as this 2.0 Cavs in this season, to see how they fit together.
Chris, you talked about their defense, and defensively they have better pieces, but also they fit better offensively. I mean, you got a roll man in Nance, you got LeBron surrounded by shooters, but do you still like how they play the style? They struggle from the three-point line. I mean, under 23% in the game. But are you still in on the style of play they're weighing, in the up-tempo nature?
Yeah, I mean, look, Ty Lue wants to push the ball. Obviously, they're much better equipped to run and push the ball. One thing, and he also wants ball movement. And I thought they got stagnant last night. They didn't have as much ball move. That can always happen with LeBron because they can become LeBron-centric, understandably. But they have to make sure they keep that ball moving because they have threats now. Other guys that can do things. So there's no need to just have LeBron be doing everything. But I also think at times, really not at times, this is their style, they become too three-point centric. Yeah. I mean, last night they took 35 threes. They take 6 more or 3 more threes per game than Golden State. And the Cavaliers are 3rd in the league in three-pointers attempted. And I'm sorry, I know that's a big part of their game, but they are not like one of these great three-point shooting teams. Golden State shoots it better. Houston is slightly below the Cavaliers in percentage, but they have better three-point shooters. If you look at Cleveland's three-point shooters, the only one you would call a knockdown three-point shooter is Kyle Korver. Mm-hmm. Rodney Hood is streaky. LeBron certainly is streaky. J.R. Smith is the very definition of streaky. So I don't think that Hood can slash and score in other ways. Obviously, LeBron can do it. Jordan Clarkson can do it off the bench. They don't need to be as three-point heavy every single night as they were last night and really as they are as a team.
Don't you think they're trying to have that style of offense to contend with the Warriors and contend with the Rockets, contend with those teams out west that they're going to have to beat to win a championship? Because I feel like that's what they're doing. And then also, and if you are off, they shot 16% last night from the floor. It's going to look ugly. I mean, nobody outside of LeBron scored in the last 9 minutes of the game. And you wouldn't expect that to happen again. But they were also on fire those first 2 games when they were shooting 46% from three. So there's going to be a happy medium in there. And they do have to kind of find a balance on their offense. The other thing I think, too, that's going to take some time is this up-tempo, we're going to run, we're going to gun, we're going to pick up the pace. That takes time for players who have not been practicing that style, have not been playing that style, to get in shape to keep up with that pace. And I think you're going to see that kind of work itself out as they get used to playing each other, because it is a conditioning factor as well.
Yeah.
How different is it? You had guys like Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder coming over who had played at Boston, who felt like at that time they could contend with Cleveland and with LeBron. You got guys like George Hill, who was in Sacramento going nowhere. Between Nance and Clarkson, the Lakers, they weren't making the playoffs. Rodney Hood going at it with you. How much does the mentality shift of this team, or just the respect for LeBron, their ears on him, given the fact that these are guys coming from teams that likely, even if they made the play, if Rodney did in Utah, they weren't going to advance far. Now they've got an opportunity here to get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
That's huge. I mean, look, Isaiah Thomas, and I get it, he was playing for a contract.
Right.
He wants to get paid this summer. That's going to be a problem with the Lakers. We'll talk about that later. But he was doing that. Dwayne Wade and Derrick Rose are used to being superstars. And even if you say to yourself, I know I'm not what I used to be, it's a different role in this team, it's hard to accept that, mentally, and that your game style, the way you play, is not like a role player. You trying to do things like you want to be the star. Now, look, all these young kids, let's go down the line. Rodney Hood, he was doing great things in anonymity in Utah. Nobody really knew about Rodney Hood except hardcore basketball fans. He's been a good scorer the last few seasons. Then you got Clarkson and Nance, who weren't going to the playoffs. Then you had George Hill, he's 8 of his 9 seasons, he's been in the playoffs. With Indiana, he was used to contending for a conference championship. Now in Sacramento, he was, there's no way he was happy. So my point is, all 4 of those guys are looking at this situation like, here's a chance for me to shine on the big stage. And that's one thing LeBron brought to Kyrie. Kyrie was playing great basketball before LeBron went to Cleveland, but being with LeBron gave him the opportunity to do it in the finals and on the big stage, and that took him to another level. And that's the case with all 4 of these guys. Believe that they are thinking, people are going to see me and now know what I can do.
You saw it. I saw it. When LeBron's talking to the media, and it was even after a loss, there still is an excitement there. And I think it does mean something. LeBron's the alpha male, right? He's the guy in there, the alpha dog, who's going to say, come follow me. And I think that gets old, even if you're his boy, even if you're D-Wade. I mean, if he's in there stressing, hey, we've got to work on the defensive side of the ball. You got to give me more effort. You got seasoned vets who have been around a while, Isaiah Thomas, and he's getting thrown under the bus, and he's like, wait a second, this defense was awful before I got here. Like, all those issues, all the drama drama is now gone.
Yep.
And now they can focus on basketball and trying to, increase their status in the Eastern Conference, get a better seed. And the fresh newness of this is really feeding LeBron and his energy as well, because now there is none of that drama.
One thing I've wondered about, even after the 2-0 start, beating two really good teams, LeBron, ever since he's been back to Cleveland, and actually in Miami as well, so that's the last 7-8 years of his career, there's always been some drama in the regular season. And so I'm wondering, now everything is good, at least appears to be good. Will there be some drama to come? 2-3 weeks from now, will there be a crisis or something? And if not, will he be comfortable with smooth sailing into the playoffs? Because it's been almost a decade since he had that.
I think he'll have enough trying to reacclimate these whole new guys. I think it's test enough.
The challenge is fine, but I'm talking about the tweets, the cryptic tweets, and there's always been an issue in Cleveland. I don't want to see it again.
No.
I hope there isn't.
But do you think that's something that he needs?
Well, look, David Griffin was their former GM. He used to always say that this team and LeBron thrive in, chaos.
Right. Well, don't forget, there is another piece coming back when Kevin Love comes back. So we'll see how that works.
I think that will be a challenge to work him in.
Are you setting us up for chaos later in the show? Of that third-place team in the West, we have a new chapter in the soap opera with Kawhi Leonard. Earlier in the week, his coach Greg Popovich caused a stir when he said he's not expecting to have Kawhi back this season. Yesterday, Kawhi's teammate Manu Ginobili spoke about the saga. Take a listen.
After 60 games, it's not that it's so new. We kind of felt like it could happen, and we still think it could happen. Nobody knows what is going to happen. But, we are too close to the playoffs to just, keep waiting, in the sense that, again, if he's back, awesome. We'll welcome him. But if he isn't, we just got to, go to battle with what we have.
Chris, does Kawhi owe it to the Spurs to play?
No, I mean, look, obviously they're paying him tons of money. He's a max contract player. But he has to feel like he's fully healthy. And here's the deal with Kawhi. The Spurs will tell you that going back even before this injury, just his entire career, he has been the type of guy that hasn't wanted to play through any type of pain or discomfort. He wants to be absolutely 100% healthy. And that's where the rub is. Now, Kawhi does feel like he was somewhat misdiagnosed by the Spurs doctors. That's caused some problems. He feels like the Spurs are kind of forcing him to get out there before he was ready. And they're looking at it like, okay, there's some pain, but you're cleared. You can play. And so that's where the tension is. Look, players, I can't say he owes it. Look at Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas played through pain in Boston with the hip injury, was very inspirational, scored 53 points on his late sister's birthday, what would have been her birthday. I mean, he did everything for that franchise, and they rewarded him by trading him. And now not his career is in jeopardy, but how much money he makes is going to be significantly less than he thought he'd get from Boston. If he had just sat out, I got the hip injury, I'm sitting out. People, all they would have known about Isaiah was he averaged 29 points. He was playing great. And they may have wondered, what if he had been healthy in the playoffs? Maybe Boston would have been able to give Cleveland a run for the money. Now it's totally different. So that's how Kawhi and many players look at it now. There's no loyalty from the team to us, so we're not going to be that loyal to them. This is a business, and that's how Kawhi's treating it. So if he doesn't feel like he's ready, I got to side with him.
Can you imagine what's going through Greg Popovich's head? Just in hearing, trying to evaluate Kawhi, is he going to play? I can only imagine what's going through his head, especially after the players and what kind of the unselfish attitude that Tim Duncan had, Tony Parker had, Manu had over the years of their greatness, of their run. I think it's really a cautious kind of relationship that you're watching unfold, because I think there is some tension there. Kawhi has not only been cleared by his own medical staff, but a second opinion, he's been cleared to play. And I've been in locker rooms when there are guys that had to play 100%. And everybody in the locker room kind of knows that guy. You figure out pretty fast, he's in the training room again. And it's not the reputation you want to get if you want to be considered an MVP-type player, a player that can lead your franchise, to be the man of that one. And I think Kawhi, as quiet as he is with the media, doesn't talk a lot, I think he does want to be considered that. And if you want to elevate yourself into those conversations, you have to go out. And I get it that you're a corporation in your own right. There's a lot of money at stake. But at some point, you've got to go out and put your body on the line to prove it. And I get he's already proven it in many ways. But you've got to show that you're able to go out there and play despite being, 100%.
Because the Spurs can offer him a supermax.
The Spurs can offer him 5 years, $217 million this summer. And I've said that this is where it'll come to a head. If they offer him that this summer and he turns it down, they're probably going to trade him. The question is now, will they offer it? Are they so disgruntled with him that they may not even offer that? They may just trade him, without offering him. Now, it'll be interesting. But to your point, this goes against his reputation. I mean, he's been reputed as one of the toughest guys in the league. Tough defender. You don't want to match up with him. And now, but he doesn't play through these injuries. I don't want to say little injuries, but play through these injuries. And he's been a quiet guy, doesn't say a lot. People have thought he's just kind of the robot that's going to do whatever Pop says.
Fits in the Spurs way.
Exactly, but he's very perceptive and intelligent. He knows everything that's going on. He may be quiet, but he's watching everything, and people are beginning to see that about him.
Here's the flip side, too. If you're the Spurs and you say, we're going to give him $217 million guaranteed, are we going to get him if he's 80%? Or is he always going to be this way moving forward? So there's this really weird dynamic. I wonder, too, just about culture. Like, it's similar to the Patriots, like in the Patriot way that you've seen in New England. Pop has had his way of doing things, and he's had guys in that locker room that have sent that message throughout. And as those guys are retiring, as Tim Duncan, they're starting to age out. They're getting older, and you're seeing new players, LaMarcus Aldridge, younger players come into that locker room. Are they not buying in as much to that philosophy? And that's a really interesting question, that it could be sort of the end of the Pop era in San Antonio.
Look at the players he's had. David Robinson was a unique individual. Yes. Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, they're all from outside of the United States, not growing up with kind of the entitlement that a lot of us as Americans grow up with. And Kawhi, LaMarcus Aldridge, who wanted to be traded this summer before he had that conversation with Popovich. So now Pop was blessed, and he'll tell you, Tim Duncan let him coach him. Mm-hmm. And that set the standard for him to be arguably the greatest coach in NBA history. And now that that group is gone, he's dealing with these kind of new young kids, and it's a little bit different. Yep.
All this talk about LeBron and Kawhi and Harden maybe caused us to forget about Steph Curry. He went off for 44 points last night. He also dished out 10 dimes. The Warriors, they shot a blistering 63% from the field. Chris, what do you expect from the Warriors the rest of the season?
I got to admit, I expect pretty much what we saw in the first half. I mean, will they get the number one seed? I don't think it matters that much to them. Whether they get it or not, they're still going to be the favorite in the Western Conference. The problem with the Spurs lately has been their defense. And as great as they've been offensively over the past few years, they've been equally good on the defensive end. They haven't been that this year, particularly lately. And that's where they've struggled. And last night, it was a light show by Steph Curry, and they put up a ton of points. But defensively, they weren't great. They gave up 50% shooting to a middling L.A. Clippers team. And so that's where, when you talk about the exasperation, the fatigue, mentally and physically, of trying to reach your fourth finals, when you know the regular season is meaningless, that's where it's really going to show up. Not so much offensively, because everybody likes shooting and scoring, but defensively, when you got to really do that dirty work on a Tuesday night in March when it really doesn't matter, that's where that shows up. I think they'll pick it up in the playoffs, but I think that's what we'll see the rest of the season offensive.
Going into the All-Star break, they were second to last in defensive efficiency, which is you wouldn't expect that from this team. No. As you said, when they're winning championships, it was because of the defensive side of the ball. I think this is why Steve Kerr is trying to do everything he can to do little mind games, to play tricks with them, to have the players lead the team, in meetings.
Let a fan coach.
Right, exactly. Do something. But ultimately, I don't think it matters because Defense is about effort. It really is. It's about effort, getting out there, grinding it out. And this team just knows we don't have to. Yeah. And they'll be in shape. That's why I'm not worried about them where they're seated, because they can. We've seen it before. We've seen them play better defense. So I think this is where Steve Kerr, more than from the X's and O's standpoint, and you see this play out, he's trying to be more of the psychotherapist and the guy who's trying to push the right buttons to see if he can pull it out, like making a change to the lineup, like putting it and inserting in JaVale McGee last night.
And McGee has played well. Like when McGee is on the floor, they are better statistically. Last night, they were 30 points better per 100 possessions when McGee was on the floor. Look, he's an energy guy, and that's what they've been lacking. Energy, inspiration. He can kind of bring that, even though he's not that great of a player. One thing I also saw last night, look, Kevin Durant is their best player. I don't think anybody denies that, because he does it on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively. But I think Steph Curry, and I thought it showed last night, he's their most important player. When the offense is running through Steph and he is just throwing up shots. I mean, we've seen him throw up crazy shots. Shots that you yell, what is he doing? And it goes in 50% of the time. When he's playing like that, unencumbered, not looking for Durant or somebody else, but just doing Steph, they're better. I mean, when they went 4-4 heading into the All-Star break, Steph was only averaging about 22 points during that stretch. They struggled. Durant was averaging 27 points. So when Durant is scoring big, I don't think they're as good as when Steph is doing what he wants to do. They beat the Clippers, the Rockets, and the Nuggets, who are all pretty good teams, by double figures without Durant in January, when Steph was having his best stretch of the season. Steph averaged 35 points a game during that stretch. Remember last year when Durant was out for the 20 games? When did they come together and start being the Warriors that we kind of expected them to be? When Steph kind of stopped deferring to KD because KD wasn't there and just played his game, and then that continued in the playoffs. So that's something to watch for with them.
Would they win the championship without Steph and they have KD healthy?
Ooh.
And flip that.
I'm going to say no. I don't think they would. When Steph was out and Durant was running the show, and he played great. He was the playmaker. He's kind of playing like LeBron. Their style was different. When Steph is not there, like they played more like a lot of other teams where everything went through KD. He created a lot of stuff. There was a lot more ISO. With Steph, it's more ball, player movement, a lot more fluid. They've proven they can win it without Durant, and I think they still could win it without him. If you take away Steph, I really don't think they will win. I don't even know that they get out of the West and beat Houston. Yeah, because Houston's obviously, at least right now, the second best team in the league.
I just think Kevin Durant is much tougher to guard. I think it's tougher to find somebody to D him up. And it's not easy to cover Steph either, but there's not multiple dimensions to his game with the way there was with KD. Because KD can back you up to the three. He can also bring you down low. So that's where I think KD is more important. But I think it's what makes them so good is that they do have them both right now. Like you have to say, all right, which one are we going to stop? And if you don't watch everybody, Steph's going to drop 44 on you like he did last night.
Another question about them, though, this season has been their depth and how Livingston looks or how Iguodala looks. Does that concern you?
Not really. I mean, those two aren't what they used to be. I mean, obviously they're getting older, and that has been a problem as well, especially in the regular season when they count on those guys a little bit more. But overall, it really doesn't concern me. I think McCaw, and now you got McGee, getting some minutes again, and I think they'll be able to make up for it. But no, it's not a concern for me overall.
No, I'm not concerned about it at all. I think this is part of Steve Kerr's coaching job, is to manage the minutes, to make sure they're fresh going in the playoffs, and then when you're in the playoffs, you're all in. Like, everybody's playing. We don't care if you're tired. You're going to get it done, whatever it takes.
Lonzo Ball has been out of the lineup since January 13th with a sprained MCL. Before the injury, he was showing some promising signs, averaging 12 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists over the last 15 games. He is questionable for tonight's game against the Mavericks. But, Chris, how much pressure is Lonzo facing in the second half of the season?
I don't really feel there's pressure on him, real pressure. Like, for him, he's playing well as a rookie. He's gotten better every month. People were down on him early because the expectations were so high because of his dad and some of the things Magic Johnson said at the opening press conference. But, basically averaging about 10, 11 points a game, 7 assists, 7 rebounds. That's very good. He's a rookie. Real basketball people, I think, look at him and just say, there's no pressure on him. Let him continue to improve throughout his rookie season, and that's that. The problem where the pressure comes in is all the external forces. His dad, LeVar, running his mouth, making these huge statements like he can make LeBron better and LeBron's definitely coming and all that. That puts pressure on you because, again, he wasn't playing that badly early on. He wasn't playing worse than a lot of rookies that you didn't hear about. Guys that even picked ahead of him or right around in the lottery, high lottery, Josh Jackson, De'Aaron Fox. Nobody was killing them saying they were a bust because their dads weren't making these outlandish statements. So that puts pressure on him. Secondly, the Lakers were playing great basketball without him. Mm-hmm. Their best stretch of the season was in January when he was out. That puts a little pressure like, okay, when he comes back, will they play as well with him? And then thirdly, Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah believes he should be starting either next to Lonzo or instead of Lonzo. And that is going to put pressure. Having a guy there who wants to come in, put up big numbers, feels like he's better than you, is looking to get a big contract. This is going to test Lonzo's mettle as far as his leadership of that team, as far as his mental toughness. I mean, Isaiah's brash. And he's going to say stuff, and he's going to challenge you, whether it's in practice or just in the game. If he's playing a lot better than you, he may say something. So we're going to see, what Lonzo's made of mentally and emotionally. That's where all the pressure is, I think.
Which is a different pressure that Lonzo's never had to face because he's always been the best player on his team. He's always had his dad's pressure of, being outspoken and talking. He's never had the pressure of a player who finished fourth in the MVP voting not that long ago that is going to be pushing him. So I think that's going to be a unique dynamic for Lonzo to get used to. And I'm interested to see how he responds to it because I think Luke Walton is a little bit of a tricky spot now, too, who's already been criticized by LeVar. And now he's going to have to deal with a really big personality, a guy whose career arc in Isaiah Thomas, who was, hey, I'm about to get paid a boatload of money, to I'm going to go help the Cavs get back to the finals. Then now I'm going to have to back up this rookie. Like, that is a big fall from grace for Isaiah Thomas. And how does that play out as far as the locker room dynamic? I think that's a pressure that Lonzo's never had to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because it's not just about his numbers now down the stretch of the season, but his leadership and how that matches up with Isaiah Thomas. What's your view of the type of leader that I know he's only a rookie. He's just starting his first year. But considering it's a young team, what's your view on the leadership role that he's taken so far?
Well, I think that look, he's not that vocal of a guy. And Jason Kidd wasn't vocal either. But you can be a leader by example and with your play. The type of game he has where he's unselfish, he gets other guys involved. Dan, players are going to like that. I mean, they're going to love playing with you if you get them the ball and scoring positions. So that's fine. But I think at some point players will want, like if you don't look like your own man, if your dad is making controversial statement after controversial statement about the team, maybe about some guys in the locker room, about the head coach, if you don't at some point step up and distance yourself from that with a comment, maybe like when he criticizes Luke Walton, you just come out and say, hey, I love playing for Luke. Just a statement like that. Mm-hmm. You can say something that doesn't offend your dad, but yet shows that you're your own man. If you're not your own man, I think it's going to be tough to lead a locker room of men. And I also think players may be hesitant, will be hesitant to confide anything into you if they think, man, it's a 90% chance he's going to tell his dad. Not only will he tell his dad, but his dad could put it out there to the world, So I think that could be a challenge.
So there's two things I look at Lonzo and I see concern for me. One is the energy he plays with, and he's really nonchalant, almost like too cool. And other players, former players, have criticized him for it. Give me more effort, give me more energy, and maybe even it's out of character, but and especially on the defensive side of the ball, like you've got to give me more, especially as the leader. I don't think you have to be outspoken. You don't want to be phony, but you got to put in more effort for you. The other thing is shooting. shooting. Like, that was my biggest concern from him coming out of college was the funky motion. Is he able to get it off? And I don't care what it looks like. I don't care if you struggle, but you got to start making some. And he's still struggling, 30% from three. He's got to get better there, or it's going to get much easier for teams to defend him because they're going to sit back and dare you to shoot it and say, all right, go ahead.
After some football, Kirk Cousins has been the talk of quarterback town ever since the season ended. He'll have no shortage of suitors on the free agent market right now. The Jets are the betting favorites to land him. However, they reportedly aren't going to hand Cousins a blank check. Danny, where should Cousins play next season?
I think Kirk Cousins he's the best quarterback available right now that you're looking at. And I am a Kirk Cousins believer. I'm a fan of his. I think he's going to bring your team to the next level. But I think he has a really interesting decision to make because he's going to have potential suitors. He's going to have several of them. And if you ask of the teams we're looking at, Jets, Broncos, Vikings, Browns, Cardinals, I think it's easy. I think you look at Denver. And I think you go, hey, it's ready-made. They have the defense already in place. You've got John Elway. You have a firm philosophy as an organization that's have a proven track record of winning over time. But here's the thing. John Elway has been pretty smart with his paydays. He's not going to just back up the truck, which some other teams will. And I think the Jets clearly backing off a little bit are like, hey, we have zero leverage if we're saying if we're going to say we're going all in. But I think it's clear they need a franchise quarterback. And I think it's just going to be one of these really tough decisions for Kirk Cousins to make. But I think it should be a no-brainer. I would play for less in Denver to get in a better situation, to play in a better division where you've got the Chiefs going with Patrick Mahomes. Who knows how that's going to work? You've got the Raiders with a new coach and John Gruden. You got the Chargers. Who knows what's happening out there? Like, you should be the favorites to win your division. It's just, for me, I think it's a no-brainer for Kirk Cousins.
Well, let me say this. And look, I'm from Cleveland. I like Joe Thomas, but unless nobody else is offering anything comparable, I'm sorry. Right. Don't go to Cleveland. I'm sorry. And I know people talk about they do have some talent. They obviously have a lot of draft picks that they've taken over the last few years. Do not go to Cleveland. He has been in a situation his whole career where there's shaky ownership. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been treated right. Why would you put yourself in that position again in Cleveland where that could be the case? And you said take a team to the next level. What is that for Cleveland? 5 wins, 6 wins, getting to even if he could get that team to the playoffs, because I've heard some say, you get Cleveland to the playoffs, I mean, they're going to build a statue for you.
You're a hero.
But if you go to Denver, as you said, you could win a Super Bowl and Super Bowls. So I'm with you. I think if the money is comparable, I would take less to play in Denver, certainly over Cleveland. But if the money's comparable, I think the place is Denver. But I'll say this about the Jets. And, like you said, they kind of dialed it back. But the money that is being thrown out there as far as what they may offer, I mean, just talk about a fully guaranteed contract or even 90% guaranteed, whatever it may be. If they really blow you away, I think it'll be hard to walk away from that. I think Todd Bowles is a pretty good coach. Mm-hmm. I thought this year when everybody thought they were going to be in the running for the number 1 pick, they actually looked pretty good at times. Mm-hmm. Obviously won some games people didn't think they would and played tough in other games. They have the cap space this summer, even if they back up the Brinks truck for him. And then next summer to add more pieces. So if he doesn't mind putting up with the tabloids and all the criticism, if you lose, then I don't think the Jets is a bad option if they really blow everybody away financially.
He's already been criticized as much as you can be in Washington, and not only by the media, but by his own team, who basically backed over the truck, ran over back and forth several times. When Jay Gruden's comments after the season was over saying a good quarterback doesn't go 7-9. Here's the crazy thing about Kirk Cousins. If he was selected at the spot RG3 was, because he was drafted later, fourth round, even the same draft. If he was drafted in first round, he would still be with Washington. He would have been extended years ago, like a couple years ago after the 2015 season. He would have gotten a nice big contract, but it's the perception of him, and it drives me crazy because he has proven over 3 years. This isn't a 7-game body work like we're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. Yep. It's not a small, Nick Foles 1 season that he had back in 2013. This is 3 years. He's been in top 10 in almost every meaningful category as far as passing stats. So he has proven it. Now he's going to get the opportunity for a team to believe in him. Kirk Cousins can be the next Drew Brees. Because Drew Brees, the perception around Drew Brees was similar when he was with the Chargers at San Diego, coming off the shoulder surgery. There were only 2 teams that were even considering looking at Brees. It was the Dolphins and the Saints. Didn't go to Dolphins, didn't work out, medical concerns. Sean Payton said, hey, we believe in you. I think a team that says to Kirk Cousins, we believe in you, I think you can get that caliber of quarterback where he could take your franchise to the next level, not for this season, but for the next 6, 7, 8 years, much like Drew Brees elevated the Saints.
See, I like Cousins a lot. I don't see Drew Brees. Like, I don't see him being a guy that can just carry, put you on his back and carry you. I think he needs other pieces. I don't see him throwing for well over, over 5,000 yards consistently. I mean, he's been close over 4. But what is it then that Washington, you brought up the draft spot, but it has to be more than that. I think they've mismanaged it. I like him, like I said, like you. But they must see something or a lack of something because they know him better than anybody. Mm-hmm. So what do you think it is that they just refuse to believe in him?
I don't think they're blown away by the top-tier arm strength. And I do think there is some ego involved here with Daniel Snyder because it was very clear that Daniel Snyder made the trade for RG3. That was the quarterback that the owner wanted in there. And Mike Shanahan, who is long gone, was the guy who said, you know what? I like this guy Cousins from Michigan State. Let's bring him in here. And I think there is some ego in play where there were some, and I think that was a very divided front office coaching staff that was like, hey, where do we stand with Kirk Cousins? And I think they got too caught up in some of the political aspects just of, hey, who's in, who's out, instead of going and looking at the product in the field. Look, they shipped off Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon. They were like, we're not going to re-sign him. And I almost felt like it was, hey, let's see how he does without him. And he put up the same numbers. He was still just as good as he was before. There's a team out there that has kind of been written off in the conversation, and I think too soon, which I think would be really interesting, and that's Jacksonville. And it was because of the Blake Bortles surgery that he's had on his hand. Where does he stand? There's an $18 million, injury guarantee if he's not healthy enough. But if Jacksonville can figure a way out, like if Bortles is healthy enough to pass his physical and they can cut him later, I think Jacksonville is a really intriguing spot for Kirk Cousins. You put him in that system, in that franchise, with that young defense and young talent, they're all of a sudden, they might be the favorites in the AFC over the Patriots if they were able to swing Kirk Cousins.
I'm with you there. As much as I like him in Denver, I think Jacksonville would be a tremendous fit. I think with Tom Coughlin, it'd be a great fit with those two. Obviously, you have the running game that I think is going to get better. Like, this year, defenses crowded the box to stop the running game because they weren't worried about Bortles. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have Cousins, they're not going to be able to do that, and I think the running game will improve, and that'll end up helping Cousins. So, obviously, defensively, they're strong. I do like him there as well. We'll see how it works out with Bortles as far as the money and the health.
So, I got a quick story for you. I was at the Super Bowl, and I was doing media, the radio row, sitting there, and I saw Kirk Cousins, said hello to him, and he was doing some interviews, and he walked off to do an interview. And this is one of the things I love about him. He had brought like 4 or 5 of his high school buddies with him. And they came up and they were talking to me, and I'm like, hey, this is really cool. You guys are here. And they were just in heaven, sitting there hanging out with their high school buddy, right? And I'm like, Kirk's in a great spot. I was like, he's going to be able to pick and go to a winning team. And I said, he's going to do fantastic. I said, unless he goes to Cleveland. And they all it was like crickets, though. Like, and I was like, man, maybe they know something I don't. But here's the thing with Cleveland, and I don't know where Kirk Cousins is mentally. Is he that type of player that looks at Cleveland and says, you know what? I can be the guy that can turn it around. And kind of prove all your naysayers wrong. I'm going to be the guy after the list of 27 whatever it is, the quarterbacks who have gone to die and their careers have died in Cleveland. Maybe he has that type of just swagger, moxie, whatever you call it, and he's going to have a huge payday to say, I'm going to turn it around. I don't know if he's got that in him. I wouldn't want to be that guy. No. But I don't know if he's got it.
You can prove people wrong in Denver. Leading somebody to a Super Bowl would prove people wrong about him. Yep. So, no, I'm sorry. Don't go there.
Welcome back to First Things First. Joining us now is former NFL head coach Eric Mangini. Coach, thanks for being here with us.
Good
we
morning.
appreciate it.
Good to see everybody.
Nice long week here with us.
Thanks. Must be all that juice I've been.
Probably because no one's getting you sick like Nick kind of shaking your hand and
very nice of you. Very
spreading
thoughtful.
germs. All right. Well, yesterday, Eagles head coach Doug Pederson said it's a blessing to have a Super Bowl MVP as your backup. Usually, after winning the Super Bowl, a quarterback should feel his future with the team is secure. However, Nick Foles is in a unique situation with Carson Wentz entrenched as the franchise quarterback. Coach, what should the Eagles do with Foles?
At this point, they should do nothing with Foles. He did something that was really hard to do, not only coming in and being able to manage the game, but also put them in position to win the game. And typically, you see those backup quarterbacks come in late in the season and things collapse. You saw it last year with the Raiders. You saw it with the Dolphins. You saw it even this year with Green Bay. So that's one element. And then you've got Carson Wentz's injury. You really don't know how that's going to respond and how quickly he's going to be available. And you go to Andrew Luck, where they thought he was going to be available. At one point, he ends up missing the whole season. So you've got a guy that's proven, and he's in a good position from a salary cap standpoint. Now, that being said, Bill Polian talked this week about if someone gives up 2 1s and 2 2s, if the deal becomes if someone gives you something ridiculous, you've got to take it and you got to move on from them.
So I'll let you guys in on a little secret. I had a miserable experience post-playing career trying to be a day trader. But I learned one thing. When you're trading stocks, you buy low and you sell high. And I feel like the value of Nick Foles will never be greater than it is right now. And if you have that opportunity, and this comes back to what you were just alluding to, if a team comes up, and I don't even think it has to be crazy, but I think if they give you really solid value, if they have your first-round pick, I think if you're the Eagles, you should move on from Nick Foles. And I think it's tough. It's one of those things where you have to view the players as commodities. And all right, if we can move Nick Foles for this and it can help set us up longer term. And I think it also has to do with you talk to your medical staff, you talk to Carson Wentz, where are you with your rehab? But you've got time on your side. You can do this the entire offseason. And as the free agency pieces of the puzzle fall in place, as the draft takes place, a team might get more desperate where they're saying, uh-oh, we missed out on Josh Rosen, or we missed out on Sam Darnold. Maybe Kirk Cousins went somewhere else. We didn't get him. You might have that opportunity to move Nick Foles, and I think you should take it.
I'm with Coach on this one. I don't think you can right now. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Carson Wentz. Even if he comes back in 9 months, it was 9 to 12 months when he's supposed to be back. 9 months, that's week 2. So you're missing the first game, no question. And if it's somewhere in between that 9 and 12 months, who knows how long you'll be without Wentz. But beyond that, who knows how long it'll take Wentz to return to what he was? Does he play differently because of, the injury? Will it take him maybe a year to get back to the form that he showed last year? I mean, I just think there are too many unknowns. And then if Wentz does come back, and in the first few games, he shows you, okay, he's back to being Carson Wentz. There's no problem. You can always trade Foles during the regular season. I still think his value will be high. People still going to remember what he did in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. And maybe even some of these teams will have seen that they don't have the quarterback they thought they had. And maybe his value is even more so in the market. So I wouldn't do anything now unless, like you said, it was just a ridiculous offer you couldn't turn down.
And the other issue with Carson Wentz is even if he comes back and he's completely healthy, last year, he got hit almost as high as anybody had in straight drop-back passes. He's the type of guy that is willing to take hits to complete balls that really he should either be throwing away and not risking that type of injury. So there's a good probability that he's going to be down again at some point, even if he comes back and he's fully healthy, and that's a problem.
Let me ask something from a coach's perspective, because we all know fan bases, and Philly, probably not the most rational, which describes a lot of fan bases. But are you concerned at all that if Carson Wentz comes back and starts week 1 and they go 2-2 and he's doing okay, that the media, the fans, that they're all of a sudden building pressure, and Carson Wentz is clearly the future of Philadelphia, that it could potentially undermine his status in that organization if there's a strong movement to say, hey, Foles was the MVP in the Super Bowl. That guy was perfect. We need to bench our young guy who's the future of our franchise. Does that come into the thought process?
Well, the most popular person on any team is the backup quarterback. Everybody always thinks that he's going to be a better answer. And I do think there's value in having competition in every room. We talk about it from a coaching perspective. where you're constantly pushing players to be better. But at the quarterback position, that doesn't really happen very often. So to have a guy like Nick Foles there to help continue to push Carson along, I don't think competition is a bad thing from a developmental perspective.
I think you're saying, no, from the controversy, it could create. I mean, even if, let's say, Wentz can't come back until maybe week 5 or 6, and Foles starts out on fire. I mean, I think as much as I think Wentz is the future and a better quarterback overall, that would seem to be a controversy, and rightly so. I mean, if they go 5-0, 4-1, and Foles is playing great, it'd be hard to take him out of there, even for Wentz. And look, it seems like these two are really close. They seem to share the same faith and all that. So maybe it wouldn't be a problem between those two, which maybe would help it. But that could be a big controversy.
But it's always much bigger than that. It's always because I'm not worried about Foles and Wentz relationship one bit. Like, those guys have been very clear. Wentz was supportive as he was going on and playing. But it would be from the outsider standpoint. And if the entire, if you're starting to face boos. And I know a coach would never admit that comes into your thought process, but I think it does. At some point, it does impact some of the decisions that are made on the field.
But it's such a high-class problem.
That's a good point.
Most teams are trying to get one guy. If you're in a situation where you have two guys that are really good and which one's going to be better, which of your really good quarterbacks are going to be better, you're in a great situation. I'd love to have that situation.
Yeah, I think a lot of coaches would. And you brought up something, too, that the best scenario might be to keep them both, let the first half of the season play out until the trade deadline. And much like the Patriots, now they didn't get some of the numbers, the 2 first rounds that were, bantered about in the offseason, but they still got a second-round pick. And you could always do that as teams face injuries during the season. A team might lose its starter, so you might even be able to get still some really good value for them in the middle of the regular season.
Well, look at what happened with Sam Bradford. That's a great example of where they got, I think it ended up being a first and a third. And quarterbacks are currency. And as you get to the start of the season, if you're a team that you feel has a chance to compete and your guy goes down, you're going to do whatever it takes to put you back in that position. So you'll trade like Minnesota did for Sam Bradford. And also you're going to get GMs and head coaches who are in a position where if they don't win right now, they're going to get fired. And those guys are willing to make deals at the start of the season that are a lot better than what they'll do right now where you still have the draft.
And you feel like Foles will have no issues at all being in that position? I know publicly he said he understands where Wentz is at.
That's the one area I would love to get inside Nick Foles' head, because he's making a lot of money, $7 million to be a backup. And I get that he got a taste of being the starter, being the guy, but I don't know where that is as far as his importance and his career, where he is right now. Like, if he's saying, hey, I'd love to be in Arizona, I want to be the man out there. I don't know if he values that as much as some young players do. Like, when you hear A.J. McCarron talk, it's very clear he wants to be the guy. And I don't know that with Foles. And it's kind of interesting, because I think you would assume every player wants to be the starter somewhere. But I think you have to take into consideration, he's in a really good quarterback room. He's got a really good coach who believes in him. He's had a lot of success. His family's in Philly. Like, now you're set in Philly for the rest of your life. And I get you can make a lot more money somewhere else, but I don't think money's what drives him.
Normally I would think that's a red flag. I mean, he seems to be completely comfortable, like, hey, I'll be here, I'll be the backup and all that. And I would look at that as, he doesn't want it. Like, this is not the guy you want leading your franchise, but he just proved that he could step in and do it. So it's an odd situation.
Yeah, I don't think it's a red flag. When you look at his career, he had the really successful start and high expectations, and then he bounces around to a couple different teams. He gets cut. He's had horrible experiences. He signs as a backup. He now gets this taste again. There's some value to taking a step back, spending another year, getting things in line, and then maybe moving on next year.
Do you have any questions about when he does get, let's say it's next year that 2 seasons from now, he gets that starting role, he's a franchise quarterback somewhere. Do you have questions about how good he'll be?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have a quarterback who has an extreme amount of production and then it falls off and then it kicks in again, who are you getting? Which quarterback are you getting? How much of a system fit does it have to be? You're looking for consistency over time, and when it peaks and valleys, now you're betting on the upside, but you know that floor is there.
Yeah.
This is the First Things First podcast. I'm Nick Wright, and before the show moves along, I want to tell you about today's show being brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring, posting your position to job sites and waiting and waiting and waiting for the right people to see it? ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way for you, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates just for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. These invitations have revolutionized how you find your next hire. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive, so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/first. That's ZipRecruiter.com/first. ZipRecruiter.com/first. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Now back to the show.
Back to football. Joel Klatt has put out his first 2018 NFL mock draft, and he has USC quarterback Sam Darnold going number 1 overall to the Browns, Baker Mayfield going at number 5 to the Broncos, and UCLA's Josh Rosen going 6th to the Jets. Danny, which quarterback do you think will be the best in the NFL?
All right, I like Joel Klatt, but I think he's out there living in L.A., spending too much time with Sam Darnold, which would be easy to do. Like, you can fall in love with the kid. He's great attitude, great perspective, very down to earth. His teammates gravitate toward him. But I actually like Baker Mayfield better. I think what he's getting knocked for, I think we're doing what we've done historically with quarterbacks in college, is we overanalyze them. And we look and say, man, he's not 6'4". He played in the system that we don't really love. And it's shown before that it's kind of, you put up gaudy statistics. I look at a player who has won at every level he's played at, who has not been the most prolifically recruited player out of high school, who was a walk-on not once but twice at 2 different programs, earned his keep, and won the respect of his locker room. And I think, and not to say Sam Darnold wouldn't do that, but as far as decision-making, I look at his decision-making on the field. He's one of the most efficient passers we've seen in the history of college football. 70% completion percentage at Oklahoma, and 131 touchdowns and 30 interceptions throughout his career. I don't see many flaws. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the history of college football. Why are we overthinking this? I look at these players, much like we did with Deshaun Watson last year. Yeah. Like, we were like, oh, Mr. Trubisky, he looks great. He's got a strong arm. Patrick Mahomes can sling it, can throw it 50 yards all over the place. Deshaun Watson played great against some of the best competition when he was facing Alabama. He was a winner. Like, why are we overanalyzing Baker Mayfield?
I got questions about Baker. I'm one of those overanalyzing. First, look, who's the last quarterback to come out of the Big 12 and do anything? Right. The only 2 Pro Bowlers in recent memory, Vince Young and RG3, and we know how those turned out. So I got questions about that. I mean, that conference, the defense is, not that impressive, things like that. Mayfield, I think he's going to have some adjustments, obviously, at the next level. People talking about his mobility and ability to make plays with his feet. I don't know that he's going to be able to do that in the NFL. Some have compared him to Russell Wilson. But Wilson runs like a 4.5 40 and can do that in the NFL. The estimates for what Baker will run are anywhere from 4.7 to 4.9. I don't think he's going to be able to make those types of plays in the NFL at the next level. So I have some questions about him. I like Darnold. I like, obviously, he's got all the physical tools. I think he's got the poise. I think he's got the passion. I think he's a gamer. I think he's got the instincts, of a quarterback. His ball security is a concern. I mean, not only the interceptions, but fumbling the football. Mm-hmm. Hopefully he can get the interceptions down at the next level, but he might be a guy that you kind of live with that. Brett Favre, you've heard him compared to him as far as being a gunslinger. I think that's what Darnold is. You might just have to live with some interceptions, but I like him the best. Rosen, obviously has the physical tools as well. There's concerns about the passion for the game, or he might be a little too smart for his own good, or at least think he's too smart for his own good. And I don't know if he's going to be able to be that willing learner that he's going to need to be in the NFL, at least not right away.
All these quarterbacks, I don't really love any of them. Like at 1 or 2, I'd prefer to be back around 10 to 15 and get Baker Mayfield at that spot, as opposed to going, all right, I'm going to take him at 1, or I'm going to take any of these guys. Darnold, Rosen, like those guys are showing up at 1 and 2 on most mock drafts.
Yep.
In all of them, you're basically trying to tip the scale because it is a coin flip with all of these guys. Yeah. It is a 50-50 proposition. So all you're trying to do is you're trying to find an edge. Like, hey, where can I maybe slight that to where it's 60-40? And all of them have significant red flags. Like, and when I look at Darnold, and he is a really good athlete. He can make all the throws. But the turnovers concern me. And it was funny, Dusty, our boy over there, said, hey, it reminds me of the Jameis Winston trajectory, because he had a phenomenal first year out of the gates, burst on the scene, was on the cover of every offseason magazine, the Heisman favorite. And then he took a step back when he was kind of handed the keys to college football. Struggle with those turnovers. And that's why when I talk about decision-making on the field, every team you go on, no matter what offense you play in the NFL, they're going to harp on the importance of turnovers. You can't turn the ball over. And with Jameis Winston, when he was coming out of Florida State, similar to Sam Darnold, big year, wins the Heisman Trophy, national championship, then struggled with interceptions, trying to do too much. And we're all like, well, he'll figure it out. And maybe he will still, but to this point in his career, and we're getting more and more years, he still struggles with interceptions. Some guys, Brett Favre, but you were able to win championships with Brett, or one championship, because he was so great as a passer. I don't know if Darnold has that type of top-tier arm strength, arm talent, like a Brett Favre, where it's worth that risk.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I wonder, like, Josh Allen, I mean, people are kind of all over the board on him, but the thing that concerns me about him is the lack of accuracy. You mentioned starting out strong your freshman year, and he was still good the next 2 years, but 56% accuracy, not against the greatest competition in the nation. And that's one of the hardest things, better than me, to improve is your accuracy.
Yep.
So if he wasn't that accurate at the collegiate level, it's hard to see him doing that at the NFL level.
Yeah, I look at Josh Allen, and I'm scared because I see all these scouts and GMs falling in love with him because he's got the Senior Bowl and he's throwing it, 79 miles an hour. And he's throwing viral videos of him throwing from his knees 50 yards. I'm like, what does that translate in the NFL? It doesn't translate one bit. You have to be accurate. You have to make good decisions. And when I see Josh Allen, I think if you're playing at Wyoming, you should dominate. And you're playing against less competition. Yes, you have less talent around you, but you should dominate against those peers. And when you have the opportunity to play against Power 5 teams, you should at least showcase some of those abilities. And he really struggled against Nebraska, against other Power 5 teams when he was given that opportunity. I would be nervous with Josh Allen. I think he's a raw talent, but we've seen a lot of guys with raw talent. Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf. You can go down the list of guys who could throw it, and it doesn't matter. You only really need to be able to throw the football in the air at your longest throw is maybe 55 yards. But you have to be able to drop it into a window that's about the size of the sea. You just have to be accurate. And so many times we fall in love with the guy's height. He's 6'5", he's 235. Go watch the film. Don't fall in love with a guy just because of what you see in him, shorts and a T-shirt.
What will the Combine do when they can sit down with these players and have these meetings and talk to, not just about the film
of
and what
course,
they can do. What does that do?
It will. I think that'll be most important to Baker Mayfield, because I think that every team has question marks, not about his play, but hey, why the arrest?
Yeah.
Why the crotch grab? Why did this happen? Why were you late to the Senior Bowl? And he had a family issue, but they're going to want to know. They're going to want to talk to him. But I think once they get him and talk to him and figure out, hey, I'm a leader. This is what means something to me. I love the game. I think he'll come out of there, and all those doubts that people might have about his character will be erased when he comes out of that meeting. In Lamar Jackson, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. That's where I'm concerned with Lamar Jackson. And we talked about this. He will struggle communicating with the scouts and GMs, which unfortunately I think is going to hurt him. But that's why if I was a team, I would say, again, throw on the film, watch him play in a complex system at Louisville where Bobby Petrino put a ton of pressure on him and he excelled, and say, you know what? I don't care what he sounds like or how he talks. We can worry about all that later. We can develop a young man who's still young. He's only 21 years old. Let's let him grow up and mature. but we're going to have a heck of a football player in our hands when we get him.
Will teams sit, with Lamar Jackson, is that a situation they would ask him about his opportunity to switch a position? Like when they talk
they'll
about,
absolutely
like,
ask
is that the
absolutely.
questions that will be asked then?
Yeah, but I think Lamar Jackson will laugh those off the same way he did with me, being like, I can't catch. That's what he told me when I said, would you consider playing wide receiver? He's like, I can't catch. So why would he do it? Which is kind of crazy.
As a tailback? Look, Bill Polian caught a lot of flack for his comments. I tend to agree with him. I'm not saying I wouldn't give Lamar Jackson a shot at NFL quarterback, but I don't know if it's going to work. How many guys, and people talking about Michael Vick, I think he throws it better, doesn't have the arm strength that Vick had, but as far as accuracy, I think he's a little better than Vick was at Virginia Tech. But guys like that just haven't lasted in the NFL. I don't think you can run that much in the NFL and stay healthy. He's not a big guy. We've seen Cam Newton have health problems because of the way he runs, and he's huge.
Yeah.
He's like twice as big as Lamar Jackson. So I do have questions about him as a quarterback in the NFL. Look, people said it even might have been racist of Polian. I don't think that. Scott Frost coming out of Nebraska, they didn't even give him a chance to play quarterback in the NFL.
Tebow wanted to be tight.
Yeah, so yeah. I don't. Julian Edelman was a quarterback in college. They didn't give him a chance. So I don't think it has anything to do with race. 12 teams started African-American quarterbacks last year in the NFL.
But he's a quarterback, not a receiver.
You think so?
He's a quarterback, yeah.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.